Welcome, everyone, to the Super Smart Women podcast. I'm Karen Medina, your host, and I am so glad you're joining us today. If this is your first time with us, you are in for a real treat. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you'll subscribe and join us every week where I spend time talking with super smart women. But today I'm talking with Tiffany Slowinski. Tiffany is the CEO of TeamSpark Advisors, and she's an executive advisor with Culture Index, which she will expand on. She's also co-founder of 3 successful franchises. But I think one of the most interesting facts about Tiffany is that she is the proud girl mom of 4 girls. So, Tiffany, I'm going to let you kick us off and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me today, Karen. And I'm kind of humbled to be on a show for super smart women. I don't know if I qualify in that category.
You definitely qualify.
Or not. But yeah, my background is I'm a small business owner. Me and my husband own 3 city lifestyle publications up here in New Jersey. So we have 3 different areas we send them out to. There's over 200 of them across the country, but we own 3 here in New Jersey. And I also am an advisor with the Culture Index, and I do that work through TeamSpark Advisors. And my background with that really is I was on the client end first and decided I had to jump all in. I just loved it so much. So what I do is I help businesses put the right people in the right seats using data and analytics. So looking at who somebody is and are they aligned in the right role? And if they are, now how do we treat them well, communicate with them effectively so that they're the most productive and that they stay put and we don't have turnover issues?
I actually am familiar with Culture Index, and I definitely want you to expand on that a little bit, because I think one of the things that we struggle with as women is kind of that imposter syndrome. And I think one of the things I love about Culture Index is it really shines a spotlight on who you are, and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, so that you can surround yourself with complementing strengths and really be a fantastic team, an empowered team. But before we dive into Culture Index, I want you to talk a little bit about this journey of being a successful entrepreneur and balancing that with family and 4, not just children, 4 girls. And we know how and talk about their ages and just shed a little light on that.
Yeah, so I've got 4 daughters, which I never imagined in a million years would happen.
I've got 1, and that was enough.
And they're 15, soon to be 16, 13, 11, and 8 years old. And I think I've kind of given up on this notion of balance a long time ago. And instead, I focus where my energy needs to be in that moment. So there's maybe a balance to that, but it's not all equal all the time. And so when they were younger, there was a huge focus on them, clearly. And then as they got a little bit older, I had to learn to delegate out some of the mom job, some of the things that I just had fallen into a rhythm of naturally doing. I've found out they're far more capable humans than I realized.
They can do laundry. They can fix
literally
breakfast.
Do.
Right.
And part of that is like getting really annoyed when you're like, you haven't emptied the lint out of that dryer, right? Or they're cooking something and you're like, not exactly the healthy eating that I was going for. But I guess you're fed right now and nobody's starving. So yeah, they do a lot more themselves than probably most kids their age. And then even just using the resources around me, letting my husband pitch in on things. And again, learning to stop micromanaging that. Nobody wants to do things if you're busy telling them exactly how to do it all the time. So I've learned to ease up.
2 things that you mentioned there. First, empowering them to do those things. And I think when, with super smart women and women that are capable, we sometimes just do because it's easier to do than it is to delegate. And so stepping back and teaching them these basic skills. I mean, somebody had to teach us. I know my mom did the same thing for me in a much quieter fashion than I did. But then being okay with the imperfections, because whether they're children or whether they're people that you work with, if you get tasked to do something and the minute you finish and you have that single ounce of pride and someone tears that down by redoing the corners of the bed or jumping in and adding different spices to what you've cooked, it's like they've told you that it's not good enough. And so recognizing that in as you raise your girls is phenomenal. And I think that's something we all have to get reminded, because that was probably one of the things I was guilty of early on with my children, is wanting to fix the things that weren't done quite perfectly. That bed wasn't made. I have some OCD in those areas, and I wanted it to look a certain way. And so, that's definitely empowering. But now you've got a 16-year-old, and is she driving? Is she taking the younger ones to school?
Oh, I wish. In New Jersey, you drive a little bit older than the rest of the country. So she'll turn 16 in January, so she'll get her permit, but then she can't drive she won't have a real license till 17, and not like a totally full license till 18. But I am looking forward to her being able to drive at that point and help tote them around a little bit.
That was a breakthrough, for us, was when my daughter turned 16, because my son had already graduated. He was already off in college. So it was me taking her everywhere, me taking her and her friends everywhere. And when she turned 16, and she was already a good driver, and she turned 16 and got her license, and we had her in this gigantic truck. So, it was F-250. Nobody, if she had an accident, somebody else was getting hurt. She wasn't getting hurt. Right. And thankfully she's never had one. Knock on wood. That's not going to happen. But that's almost as freeing as when they come out of diapers. I just will go ahead and give you that to look forward to. And so we'll kind of segue over. Let's talk a little bit about Team Spark Advisors, how you got introduced to Culture Index, and then kind of beyond just the clients that you work with. I know you're also heavily involved with BNI and Entrepreneurs Organization. So let's talk a little bit about those areas and what Culture Index has kind of shined a light on for you.
Yeah. So with Culture Index, it's all about right people, right seats. And by knowing who somebody is intrinsically, innately, we can align them where they're going to succeed. I like to say there's no wrong people in the world. I mean, maybe some, but there's a place for everybody. There's no perfect profile. It's kind of a joke after people take it. Sometimes they'll be like, did I fail? Like, how did I do? I'm like, there's no failing. It just is. It is who you are. And sometimes our greatest strengths can also be our biggest weaknesses. I'm a highly impatient person. I'm less patient than 99% of people walking the earth. And I always knew I was impatient. I mean, that would be not a surprising fact. I didn't realize it was that extreme compared to others. And so for that being such a weakness, it's also a huge strength, because part of being impatient is I work really fast. I get things done. I'm a driver. I push things. Like, we're going. We got to finish. Let's go. And so it's a huge strength of mine. But I also have to know when to temper it, because not everybody can work at the speed that I work at. And if I expect everybody else to work just like I do, I'm going to really frustrate a lot of people, and I'm going to be frustrated as well. My expectations aren't going to be aligned with any sort of reality. And so this can be really freeing. A lot of business owners that I work with on this are like, wow, I understand myself better. This is kind of liberating. Sometimes people are like, it's nice to know what some of my strengths are. Like, maybe I sort of thought I was good at that, but I didn't really realize the extent of it. So it helps really empower people in understanding who they are, and also forgive themselves for their weaknesses. That it's okay. It's who I am. There's other people who are just like me out there. I'm not some sort of screw up, or I'm not just lazy. This is who I am.
I think when I actually did is it called a survey, and it produces a profile. When I got mine back the first time, I was like, part of it was, yeah, I knew that. And another part of it was, Okay. And one of the most interesting facts that I learned about myself and reading down through it was I'm an extrovert. And I knew that from early on. I've always been that way. Every survey of any type that I've ever taken, Myers-Briggs, all of that, I fall into that extrovert category. And so I thought, well, it's because I'm a people person. But then my culture index survey said I only really like being an extrovert when it suits my purpose. And I thought, well, that's not right. And then I was almost offended by that. But then I thought, well, no, that just means I actually have a lot of purposes because I have purpose at work. I have purpose in church. I have purpose with my family, in my community. And I thought, you're right. If I actually come across somebody in a setting and they don't align in any of those areas with my purposes, I don't usually find the conversation engaging and I don't usually want to continue. Now, I might have when I was younger because I felt like I needed to talk to everybody. But now there's only so many hours a day. I can only talk to so many people. So I'm going to choose who I talk to. And yes, they usually fit into a purpose when that happens. So that was enlightening for me on the culture index survey because I just thought I just liked people in general. But apparently I don't.
I have your survey up in front of me. I'm like looking at it over my other screen here. Yeah, you're an extremely autonomous, high autonomy person. You are driven, self-starter. You like to be in charge. So yeah, you're perfectly extroverted when you're I bet you run a lot of these groups because you are like, I'm a leader. I got this. I'll tell everybody what to do, and we're gonna hit our goals here.
Let's talk about the challenges in that. Now that you've been looking at, so early on in my career, it's off-putting to a lot of people because if I don't learn to temper that with kind of that nature nurture, if I don't take care of people, if I don't make them also feel valued, if everyone in my surrounding is like, well, we don't even have to work because Karen's going to do everything and it's never going to be good enough, for Karen. I can become that classic Karen way too easily. And I fight against that inner nature sometimes as I've gotten older. And I think self-awareness is such an empowering mindset to know who you are, know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and learn how to balance that with the people that you work with, which is one of the beautiful things about Culture Index. So talk to this audience because many of the people that are listening to this may be small business owners, may work for companies that have a need for this in their organization. How would they recognize that? And how would something like Culture Index really, empower them?
So I feel like with people, I now have a cheat sheet. I almost feel blind when I'm talking to someone and I haven't surveyed them because I'm like, I don't even really know how to talk to them. I don't know who they are, right? So it's like getting this little cheat sheet on everybody in an organization and knowing who everybody is. How should I communicate?
What makes them tick?
What's going to motivate them? There's people out there who will do anything just for a pat on the back. I was talking to a woman recently and she had stayed in a very low paying teaching position for many years and said, I really did it because I liked when the principal would tell me I did a good job. I liked when the parents were happy. I liked when the kids were excited, right? Whereas, other people might just think, oh, money motivates everybody. So if I want my employees to do a better job, let me just throw money at them. Well, you have to pay everybody fairly. Yes, of course, people have to be able to feed their families. But for certain people, a pat on the back will actually get them to produce more than a promise of money at the end of it. So understanding how do you motivate different people within your organization, and then how do you promote appropriately? Sometimes we'll take somebody who's fabulous in a position and then we throw them into a management position.
Oh,
and
yes.
They're terrible.
Yes. Promote appropriately is the key word. Promote is great. Putting somebody where they are, I'm excellent at this, And so you promote me to manage other people that do this. And I'm not an excellent manager. So yes, that was enlightening in the survey.
Yeah, it happens tons in sales departments. You take your best salesperson and you make them sales manager, and they're a lousy sales manager. Now you've lost your best salesperson who's producing for the company, and you also have a lousy manager running the team. It's like a double whammy with one misstep there. And then the person's not even happy. Like, they liked the idea of getting promoted. We all like that concept. That feels good. Oh, I'm moving up the ladder. But then you're being put in a position to fail, that you're not going to do well. And then that doesn't feel good. Nobody wants to go to work every day and fail.
No.
So
does culture index, if someone engages with you to work with the culture index, and they survey all of their employees, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you also create kind of profiles, ideal profiles for prospective employees. So I have a job description. This is what I'm hiring. This is also what their culture index profile should ideally look like, correct?
Exactly. So depending on the position, who might work well within this particular team, within this company, based off of not only the job description, but also who do they have to work with? Who are the other people there? That's going to influence also who we should bring in for that spot. So, sometimes you use very general names for positions, but you've really got to check in. I have a company I'm working with, and the CEO said he's going to hire a CFO. So I've got in my head what a CFO should look like. But then when I really started questioning him and working with him, he's really looking more for an accountant and not a true CFO. I'm like, okay, you got that title there, but that's a really different type of role. That's a different person that's going to be strong in that role. I'm glad I asked these questions.
As a CFO versus someone who's strong as an accountant.
Yeah, really, it was more accounting that this person was doing.
It's not so much what the title is, but what the responsibilities are in that role that's going to make a difference in the best profile.
Exactly, and that's really where the consulting piece comes in. Sometimes, just enough to be dangerous. So you think you're looking, oh, this is going to be the perfect person, and you don't really understand fully exactly what do they have to be able to do in order to be successful. So it's a tool then on the front end. Now, it's not the only thing. Right? There's motivation. People have to want to be in your company. They have to be motivated. They have to have an interest in the work. And, there's, culture index is not going to measure everything.
It's not going to solve all the problems, but it definitely,
it's a piece of it.
It gives you I think, in today's employment scenarios, here's an application, here's a job. Well, here's a posting. And I fill out a job application, and they get hundreds of job applications, and they have one or two pieces of paper to gauge on. And usually it's an AI that blows through that and says, yes, this person might or might not be, good for that job. And it kicks out, so many, but then you're still left with 30 that you're considering. And how do you narrow 30 down to one? And I think that was one of the most powerful aspects of culture index. So I'll definitely put a link in the description so that we can make sure anybody that's fascinated and interested in that they can reach out to you, because if anything, I think everybody that owns a company would benefit knowing their own profile and considering how culture index could help them. So let's talk about how you got involved with BNI, and then also with Entrepreneurs Organization, because I know EO is not, there's a level you have to reach. There's some requirements there. So let's talk about how you got involved, where you served there, and why you chose those organizations.
Yeah, so BNI, I've been a member since the pandemic. Actually, I joined when it was virtual, when the world was shut down. And I first got involved because my husband was a member of another chapter locally. And he said, I think you'd be really good at this. You're a natural networker. You connect well. And we went in initially because we own local magazines. We sell local advertising and partner with businesses in the community that want to get in front of our audience. So it was a natural fit for me. And so being how I am, I don't do anything small. I went and joined the biggest BNI in the entire state. So we've got over 70 people in our chapter.
That's a huge chapter.
Here. Yeah, we're really big. I think the average chapter is like 20 people, and we're over
That takes
70.
a while to go around that circle, your meetings.
We run a tight ship, or you'd never get out.
And you're currently serving as the president.
Yeah, I'm president this year, which is a huge honor that
and commitment.
Leadership thought. Yeah. I spend more time on it than you would think, but I love it. And maybe I view it really at this point, like I've gotten so much out of it. I mean, from a business perspective, it's been a great lead gen. It's a referral source. So you're connecting with other business owners in the area that know, like, and trust you, hopefully, and they could spread the good word about what you do to others. So that's been amazing. And then I also just enjoy the community of it. I care about the group. I want to see it run well and prosper. And even though we're the biggest, and in my opinion, the best, I want to be even bigger and better. So that's fun for me to help with that growth.
And that's so true in any organization. You can join organizations and you can show up and you can sit against the wall and maybe you'll get a little bit out of it. But I think when you show up and you dive in, you're like, I'm not just toe in the water. I'm both feet in. We're diving deep with this organization. You get way more out of it. I joined our chamber here in little Stephenville, Texas, that's growing by leaps and bounds. And the first thing I did was I spotted these very busy people running around the room, and I'm like, who are they and what are they doing? Well, that was the ambassadors. And I'm like, great. How do I become that? Well, now I'm an ambassador with the chamber, and I absolutely love it because now I'm one of those busy people running around the room, and I've met so many more people by serving more. And I think that's one of the hesitations sometimes people have. So talk about Entrepreneurs Organization, because that's a whole different organization with a whole different purpose.
Yeah. So really it's about development, personal development as a business owner. And so I joined about a year ago. I'm helping out on the membership committee now, which is right up my alley.
So you join and you jump right in.
I jump in, right? People they kind of identify that. My personality.
But how can you, Tiffany? You have, you have 4 children, you have businesses to run. Yeah. I always get that. It's like, well, the person that says, I don't have time or I can't do that, usually they just don't want to. That I don't have time for that never works for me in a conversation with someone. It's like, no, you have time. You may not choose to put your time here, but you will commit time to what's important to you. So that's interesting that you say that.
Like the idea of balance. There's a lot of things I say no to. So I get asked to join so many groups and so many things. And I sometimes look at myself like, maybe one day when I'm like kind of retired or my kids are bigger, there's more things I would like to do, but I can't do everything. There is, I have to pick where I'm going to put my time, what's going to have the most impact, what do I enjoy? And I have to make those choices. And, I've got children to take care of as well. And sometimes, I'm going to an event this weekend and I'm like looking at the calendar while my daughter's going to be at a dance practice and this one's got to get to Girl Scouts and then this one's doing the nativity scene at the church. Okay, so I'm like plotting out the day and like, hey, this one's going to come with me to this cookie exchange because
I just go straight from there to
exactly. And people understand that. And I'm in a world where they're like, sure, bring the kid. Who cares? That's kind of cute. And so I make my own rules. There's people who would be horrified at the idea of like dragging their kid along. And I'm like, well, for me, it's really the difference between whether I'm going to come or not.
Kudos to you. You mentioned Girl Scouts. I'm a lifetime Girl Scout.
Wow.
I bleed green and I absolutely love the Girl Scout organization. My granddaughter's moving to the area and she's 8 and I cannot wait to actually have her in a Girl Scout troop. So I love Girl Scouts. And you said cookies. It's not quite cookie season yet. I know when cookie season starts, but it's coming up. And yeah. So have you had the opportunity to jump in Girl Scouts to be a part of any of those troop level activities as a parent?
So it's funny because all my girls have done Girl Scouts at various points. I only have one who's still in. And of course, I've been asked so many times, like, do you want to be a troop leader? And I'm like, no, I don't. Because I would be a worse troop leader. I am not crafty. I'm not creative. I'm like, these poor kids don't need me. I have done some camping. So I've gone to, we call it camporee. So I've done that. And it's kind of more like glamping than real camping, but that's rough enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm not super outdoorsy, but I'll take one for the team and go with her once a year.
You have to say no to certain things. And that's probably been one of my greatest challenges, is saying no. This has been a fascinating conversation. We have so much in common, but I want to make sure that I hit a couple of questions that I think are important to the audience members. So I usually ask my time travel question, and I'm going to, but you have girls this age. So it's a completely different mindset for you, and thinking, if you could go back and tell your 15-year-old self, which you have a 15-year-old, so you probably tell your 15-year-old self these things daily. I'd almost ask, not what would you tell yourself, what would you have done differently as a teenager? And what would you, as a 15-year-old, want to hear from your mom?
I don't know if I wanted to hear anything from my mom at that age. Differently. I don't live with a ton of regret. So it's probably one of the pieces of my personality. I tend to do what I want. But I think maybe I would I wished I was a little more confident as a teenager. I think I mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, and 100% deal with that. I was just talking at my EO group yesterday, and even a group of men were talking about imposter syndrome. So sometimes we think it's just us women, and you're like, oh, the men feel this way too. I mean, maybe not to the same degree. I don't know. I don't know how they feel, but I know I've often felt that way, that I'm not worthy, or why would anybody really want to hear what I have to say? Or maybe I've
struggled with that in launching this podcast. I'm like, what if they don't like it? But yes, keep going.
Yeah, like, who am I to think that I should have this podcast, right? Like, and it's actually why I haven't started a podcast, because I got the same thoughts in my head. I'm like, would anybody want to listen? I don't know. So yeah, I would love to instill more confidence in younger Tiffany. I feel I actually went to school for broadcast journalism. So this is all like when you being behind the camera and in front of the camera. This was my world back then. I studied journalism and wound up going a completely different path for a number of years. Went to grad school for psychology and wound up becoming a school counselor. And I think I wound up in the school system because that seemed safe. Right. That was like what I knew. And I liked school. I liked going to school. So I was like, I'll go work in a school. And that wasn't really a fit for me. So I think I would have just told my younger self, like, chill out, be confident, just go try things. Don't feel like you have to have it all figured out. Don't think you have to have your whole career figured out at 18.
And it's never going to be what you thought. I mean, when I was 18, I thought I was going to be an FBI agent. And then when that didn't pan out, I thought I was going to be a rocket scientist. And when that didn't pan out, I mean, so yeah, very few people at 18 or 15 know exactly what they're going to be and become that. But I love that confidence. I've had others on the show that, have talked about just not so much, even just the confidence, but just being okay with who you are and not feeling like you have to match up to anyone else's expectations. So yeah, I love that. Okay. So aside from that time travel, let's talk about how you feed yourself. What books do you read? What books would you recommend? Are there any, podcasts that you listen to or any particular people that you follow? Share what your resources are.
Yeah, so I do more listening than reading. So I have a pretty active Audible account. And now I'm like, I was just listening yesterday to a book by the Arbinger Institute. That's pretty interesting. The Anatomy of Peace. So basically how to enter into situations with an open heart, because we go in with our own, they call it boxes, but preconceived notions of, I deserve this, or I'm better than you, or I'm below you. So that, some of that kind of imposter syndrome, like I don't deserve to be here. And so when you realize that and can get out of it, you can see other people as humans instead of just obstacles to overcome. So really kind of shaping just even leadership within a company, having that greater understanding of where your employees are coming from to get to that resolution instead of just thinking they just need to stop doing this, right? I just want to tell them what to do, because we come from that perch of
Right.
directing others
Instead of being in their shoes and
exactly
knowing.
And that by being in their shoes, you're much more likely to actually like it's sort of weird to explain, like you're not supposed to go into this trying to influence the situation, but in the end you wind up having a lot more influence when you connect with them on a human level.
Connection there is definitely the key. Well, I will definitely put a link to that book in the description. Anyone else that you would want to share?
Yeah, who Alex Hormozy I listen to all the time. Just I find him inspiring and very he says it as it is. I like that. He doesn't sugarcoat. Probably ticks off a few people along the way, but he is definitely one of those like be the hardest working people in the room. That really, it resonates with me. You want the things that other people don't have. You got to do the things that they're not willing to do. And he's got great books as well, in addition to his podcast and all his YouTube videos.
Well, I will also link to Alex's podcast and YouTube page. I've actually heard his name. I had not heard of him before, but someone else had mentioned him, so I've got to check him out. Last question. Super smart women are women that serve, mentor, applaud, reflect, and teach. And we've talked a lot about, your servant leadership. What would you want to share today what would you want to leave someone in our audience with about embarking on their journey, or maybe changing their path? A lot of women feel stuck. So what would be your encouragement and advice to them?
So I had a complete career change in my mid-30s. I had been a high school guidance counselor for 13 years, and I always felt like I had no job experience, that it was the only like adult job I'd ever had. And I didn't understand that my experience there could translate to doing anything else. And I use bits of being a guidance counselor every day with what I do now. I feel like I'm a guidance counselor for businesses and CEOs, right? Yeah. And so I use those skills all the time. And I was not confident in changing a career. I knew I wanted to do something else. I didn't know how to do it. And I kind of started small with like literally a little side hustle thing going on, which gave me the confidence to be like, all right, I got to go. So just knowing there's options. Don't think so inside the box. There's ways that your experiences are greater than your resume. And a really interesting fact I had read when I had first started with our magazines, I forget the name of the book now, but it was something about like empowering women. And it said, women won't apply to a job unless they fill 100% of the qualifications. Men will apply for a job if they fill like 20% of the qualifications. And so as women, we hold ourselves to much higher standards. Again, that whole imposter syndrome. And so we hold ourselves back by not putting ourselves out there, thinking we're not worthy, we're not qualified, we're not going to get hired. So quit worrying about what the description says. If it's something that speaks to you, give it a shot, because all the men are going to give it a shot. You might as well give it a shot too.
So let's quit writing job descriptions that eliminate really qualified people. And I've noticed some that will actually say, this is a list of possible qualifications. If you feel that you meet any of these, we invite you to apply. So they're kind of, some of the job descriptions are actually changing for that. So I love that you pointed that out. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so grateful that you're here and that you spent a little time with us. To the audience, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our podcast and be sure to plan and join us each week as I talk with more super smart women. Until then, stay smart, stay savvy, and stay safe. Thanks for being here.